Welcome to the Surviving Siblings podcast. I'm your host, Roffler. As a surviving sibling myself, I knew that I wanted to share my story, my brother's story. I lost my brother to a homicide in November 2016. And after going through this experience, I knew that I wanted to share my story and his story. And it's taken me quite some time to come to the mic to tell it, but I knew it was an important one to tell. So here I am to share his story and mine with you. And it's important that I tell the story of the surviving sibling, the forgotten mourner, the story that is not told enough. So thank you for coming with me on this journey, and thank you for listening to my story. On my way back from Mexico, as I landed, I had a conversation with my father via WhatsApp. And so it was very interesting because I had this conversation with my mother as I was in LA and doing that filming and kind of closing this weird chapter of my life out there. And I kind of felt okay with where I was at with her, even though it ended so oddly and traumatically with her. And then with my father, we had been chatting and we had been talking, and I had discovered that my father had returned home to officially marry the woman that he had been with for, I guess at least a decade at that point, over a decade. And he had officially married her. And so there were just a lot of conversations happening, but my father was really intrusive and persistent about me getting help. He wanted me to get help. He was worried about me. And there was a lot of breakdown in what that meant. And I was really confused. And I remember asking Walter many times, and even some of my other friends, my really close friends, like my grieving girlfriend, as I call her. And she's so much more to me than that. But, what is he meaning by this? And, there's also language barriers, as I mentioned before with my father. But I thought he was asking me, he wanted me to, go away or, go on a trip. And so I was explaining to him that I had gone to Mexico and, I was in a better place and, I'm refreshed and, I need to go back to work. Work is an identity for me, which is not 100% healthy. It's really not. And it wasn't healthy also because I wasn't always doing, there were parts of my work that I really loved, but it wasn't really my own. And I didn't realize that till later. And that, I think, was deeper than he even really understood. But I think he was trying to tell me, I needed balance, I needed time off. I had been working so hard for so many years. I was so career driven. And it was coming out really badly because he was telling me to go to, some kind of rehabilitation place. And I was confronting him. I'm like, what are you talking about? And it turned out it was a communication breakdown. He was telling me that I needed some help. I needed, to go somewhere for my mental health, because of what I had seen and what I had gone through. And I was taking it I was asking questions. I was like, do you think I have an issue with drinking or drugs or this or that? What are you talking about? But he was referring to the post-traumatic stuff that I had gone through. So we kind of got in a bit of an argument via WhatsApp, and that was a little bit of a buzzkill to be going through, or as you're coming home from Mexico. But he had been discussing that with me for a while. He had been pushing that for a while. And I knew that I had post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's why I had been proactive with going to my doctors and, being on medication, going to talk therapy, going through the things that I could control as fast as I could. But I also just didn't think he was really getting it, which really broke my heart because here he was coping with it a totally different way, going back home and finally marrying, this woman he had been with for a really long time. And so that hurt my heart. That was a heartbreaking moment after having these really positive experiences. And it was like so weird because everything was so negative with my mother for like the entire experience. And then with my father, that took such a weird turn and such a sad turn. And I realize now, and even very quickly after that, I'm like, no, it was a breakdown in communication. That's not what he was saying. He really was genuinely concerned about my mental health because, again, I saw things and witnessed things and went through things, and I was also taking things very differently than my two other siblings, and even, I think, him and my mother. And I look at it now and I realize I think it's because I started to process right away. Pretty quickly. And I think from what I've learned and what I've seen, I went through post-traumatic stress syndrome. I think everybody goes through things differently. Like, I didn't really suppress, and so I had to take the medication to kind of help calm it down because I was just allowing myself to process. So I don't know, just everything was coming out, and it was too much. It was too much for everyone around me, except for people who understood it, like friends. And, you know, my girlfriend, she understood it because she was processing hers in her own way, and she had already lost her father, so now she's lost her mother, and so it was something that she was able to deal with. She didn't understand sibling loss. Well, she has lost a sibling, but, you know, it was a different type of loss, but still, she understood, and there was a suddenness to her mother's loss. There were the different components, so there was an understanding there. And then also, you know, my friend Walter, who I refer to quite often, he was understanding because he had been in the military and gone through, you know, actually seeing quite a few people die, which is tough. Very tough, and I'm never going to understand that. I'm never going to understand seeing that. But he understands the suddenness and the post-traumatic stress of that type of loss. And, you know, my dear friend Caleb that I've talked about on the podcast, he understood that as well from being in the military too. So it was an interesting thing to kind of come back to. But I was actually happy with how I dealt with it with my dad. I kind of shut down a little bit for a while. I think we all want to deal with things perfectly when we're going through grief and loss. And so I guess my advice, I'm not an expert, but I'm just here with you grieving and surviving with you, is just that, you know, you're doing the best that you can, and that's all I was doing. And I have a father who is a foreigner, and so, you know, I was born here in America, and he was not, and he lives in another country now again. This man speaks more than one language, and so there's going to be a breakdown, especially when you're WhatsApping each other. Best communication I've ever had with my dad, and ever will have with my dad, is when we're face-to-face. And so I can look back on that 5 years from now and realize that, but in the moment, I mean, those messages were like heartbreaking. I'm like, what does he think is wrong with me that I need? It wasn't about that. It was actually genuine concern, but it can come out really terrible. But I remember coming back from that trip, and I'm like, how did we come so full circle? How did we come from these two different trips? Both ended beautifully. I got two totally different things out of them. One was like a drama-filled, chaotic ending, thank God it's done. And the other one is like this beautiful zen. I felt the spirit of my brother with me. I have hope that like God is with me again. On the previous episode, I spoke about how I really do believe in that. I do believe that our loved ones are with us, but like I was really struggling. I was really struggling with that. I did not necessarily believe that. I didn't believe in a lot of things. I lost faith in a lot of things. I was questioning God. I was questioning life. I was questioning the universe, whatever you believe in. I was questioning it all. Mention it all. Question it all. I was questioning it all. And that really enlightened me again, that week I spent in Mexico, because I was just able to feel clear and free. And feeling free for me has always been a place where I can connect again to myself. And knowing that now is so important. And I guess that's another piece of, connection I'd give to you as a surviving sibling, or if, you're trying to help someone who's lost a sibling. Where do they connect, and where do they feel free? Because you feel so suffocated and lost and just depressed and so dark. There's just so many. It's indescribable. It's really indescribable. And so the fact that I was even able to feel light or feel it all was huge. And so coming back to that conversation was very difficult, but I'm glad that I was able to sort through that. And I kind of left things just where they were with my dad. I love you and wish you the best. And that's kind of where I left it. I was happy he got married. I was happy things, moved in that way for him. I mean, it was about time. I mean, they had only been together for I don't know how long, and he took care of the daughter. And so it was like a whole thing. But I was ready to move on, and I did. I did. I moved on with my life, and I started this new job, and it was way too fast. I know that now. But we don't know that in grief sometimes. We don't know that we're moving too fast. We don't know that we're moving too slow. We don't know anything. How are we supposed to know unless we dive in or we hold back? How do we know if we're moving at the right speed? And all I could do was go too fast, because that's typically what I do with work. And I did. And it was a job, funnily enough, based in LA. And I really enjoyed my time, and it was fun, and I really accredit my entrepreneurial, final nail in the coffin as to why, I didn't go back to full corporate America to this job, because I got an experience to, a real nitty-gritty startup, in the art district, so that was really cool and fun. But it was too early for me, I think, emotionally, to go back to work, even though I enjoyed it and had a great time traveling again, because I've got that travel bug, as you probably heard me talking about. And then there were also some things going on there that were really unhealthy emotionally. And when you're not healthy emotionally yourself, and you're going through so much, you're not going to be able to handle those situations. And I wasn't able to. It was not healthy in a lot of ways. And so I resigned. Only a couple months into the job, and that was the fastest I've ever done that. And that was actually a really proud moment for me. And it took a lot of courage for me, because I've stayed at jobs for years and years. I had so much tenure. And leaving the job when my brother passed, and then doing this for my mental health, it was huge. And that's when I decided to launch my first podcast, which is a podcast that still lives today, the MaYapinion podcast. It's just evolved. I talked about the podcast earlier, but that podcast talked about my show I was on, the experience. And I talked about my brother's death a little bit on the show, on the podcast, but it was not to this level. I'm talking about it all here. And so here I was doing this podcast, didn't know how it would do, and it ended up doing great. And Walter encouraged me to do it. He had been in radio for 25 years or something at the time, 20 years, something like that. And so I just kind of hit the mic and we did it. And so kind of focused on that and did consulting work and went out on my own and was just focusing on myself, or at least trying to. And I found myself going through extreme highs and lows. And I had to watch the season of the show that I was filmed on come out in April when our podcast came out. This was simultaneous, obviously, because we're commenting on the show. And because of that, I felt like I was reliving everything that had happened. I felt like I was like leading up to the events of what happened to my brother. And even just talking about this to you guys right now, like, and talking through this, like, you might be able to relate to this. I'm sure you can. It gives you a sense of anxiety, like, but I'm watching this, like, just, I mean, I'm not even, like, I'm just a little contestant on this show, like, but it would give me anxiety. I would go to watch parties and things like that. And as the, like, reunion episode got closer and closer, it was me watching the chain of events closer and closer, like, in my life going on. And so I was doing, again, contractual work and, trying to get things off the ground for myself while doing a podcast. And it was really exciting for me because I knew I'd gotten the entrepreneurial bug bit in me. And I knew this is what I was meant to do with my life. I've been an entrepreneur and really been doing this for other companies. And I'm like, I know this, but, like, I'm also struggling. Like, I had this internal fight. I've got post-traumatic stress syndrome, like, this is hard. And I'm also calling a detective nonstop. And this detective was a nightmare. It was awful. I called him, when I say I called him all the time, that might sound a little crazy, but some of you may really relate to this. Like, when I said called him, I would get, like, scared to call him because, like, he wouldn't answer. And then when he did answer, he would have different stories and conflicting stories for me. And he would tell me, oh, nope, the guys are changing their story now. Like, it sounds like, nope, definitely, you're right, it's off. It's definitely off. What happened to your brother? Nope, it's not lined up, the gun that he was shot with. Nope, it doesn't sound right. He's like, don't worry, I'll get back to you. And then he would never get back to me. He was the least communicative person, like, I've ever dealt with. And it just felt so, like, I felt so defeated. And the ignored phone calls, he would have constantly, his inbox would be full. And I just felt like giving up all the time. And meanwhile, this show's airing about me and people are saying all these horrible things on social media about me because they have no idea what's really going on in my personal life. And then the reunion airs and I end up having this really, really bad moment. I think it was one episode before the reunion. I went to a watch party. There was always a watch party. And we were always drinking, which is not a good situation. I was definitely not on the amount of medication I was before, but we were always drinking. And I was just kind of trying to have fun and bring levity to my life because my day-to-day was very dark, very dark. And I remember coming home, obviously never driving. Obviously not, guys, not condoning that. No, we don't do that. But I remember coming home and this was a rock bottom moment for me. And I was walking to my condo and I walked straight into the door. And again, I'm getting so raw, but this was awful. And I literally just put the key in the door and I just I fell and smashed my nose and everything. It was so sad. I was just crying. And this is when Walter would stay with me when I was not at his place. And he was an amazing friend to me at the time, an amazing friend. And he came out and he was like, oh my God, what is going on? I mean, I had it was not a pretty scene. It was blood, I hurt myself. And I just started crying and I was I don't know if I can process what's going to happen next. And he's what are you talking about? And obviously, drinking is not a good combination with these things. And I was talking about the fact that I was reliving what happens next. And what happens next is I have to go talk about the loss of my brother. And that was just And I just broke down, and I thought I had broken my nose. That's how bad I smashed. It was crazy. I actually broke my key in the door. It was so bad. It was really bad. When I look at the shoes that I was wearing now, I also kind of give myself a little bit of grace because they were huge heels, huge. They were huge Christian Louboutins, so yeah, huge honkers there. So I don't think that was a great choice either, but yeah. I gotta laugh, guys, with some of this stuff, and I know some of you that have dark humor can laugh at that, but that was a wake-up call for me. I remember sitting in the foyer of my condo that night with him for a while and just going, I am really worried about me right now, because it was I went back down the dark place that I was at before. It was back down this dark, I don't know how to describe it, and I'm sure those of you that have felt this and have gone through this experience, it's ebbs and flows. It is not this straight line up or straight line down and then back up. It's not that way at all. And then watching yourself on TV and realizing that you replay the moments of life happening behind, and meanwhile people are ripping you apart on social media. So it was just and then meanwhile I had no family support. It was very lonely. It was a very lonely time for me, and that's when I realized, okay, I probably need to chill it out on the drinking because that's not helping, and really take care of my mental health, be aligned with more of my medication, and should I even be on some of this medication, really looking at a lot of those things and really tap into myself, because I was kind of losing it again. And I did, and I was really proud of myself for that. I kind of got it back together for a little bit, because that was really hard to watch, and I kind of freaked out again. The reunion was hard to watch because I got torn apart for that, because I looked totally out of it. It was terrible, and that was a dark time. It was dark, and then all of a sudden it was release. People knew what happened. It was it was very similar. It was kind of justice again. It was okay, now what? But this was okay, now that's over. Now I can really focus on myself. It was a breath of fresh air. And I just was very grateful for the friendships that I developed with these women, which was so crazy, because if you watch this show, you would never believe that, never. But they were very supportive and caring. But that was just a very dark, low moment, and I think it's really important that I share that on this podcast and be very real and honest, because I think people are too hidden and don't really share these dark things that go on because they're real. And I see a lot of people in groups, really private groups and really intimate groups, sharing, they're struggling with sometimes, drinking or drugs or different things, and they're coping, or they're trying to get sober, or dealing with this and that. And I can't say it was that serious for me, but I was definitely struggling with some things, or, definitely drinking too much with some, things I shouldn't have been doing. And I definitely just wasn't self-aware with some of this stuff and let it get out of control. And I think I don't want to hold anything back. I want you to know that my story is different from yours, and your story is unique from mine, but we all struggle, and we all go through grief in our own way, and I don't think it's right to beat yourself up, and I wish I knew that, and I wish I had somebody tell me that. I really did, and I really do, because I beat myself up for every mistake, falling into the door, which I shouldn't be laughing at, but I have to bring levity to it because I'm okay. Thank God. I'm okay. I had a good friend taking care of me. I had, other friends around me, thank God, that were giving me love, and that's why I think your grief support system is so important. But life was going on for me, and I was surrounding myself with some people that were quite negative. And I was continuing to try to kind of work and do contractual stuff for myself, also while trying to track down this detective that just wouldn't give me the time of day. And I felt sick about it. I felt sick about the whole thing. And I think the lowest of the low for me was when I decided to trust some people in my life, and I started dating again. That took me a while. And I started dating, and I started seeing someone, that put me in a really horrible situation, and I was just so... This happened in like the fall of 2017, so we're almost going on a year. And I was very vulnerable, and it was not anything serious, but this person, wanted me to take a trip with him, and I ended up, I went on a trip, and I ended up leaving his hotel because I didn't trust him. I wasn't thinking, and thank God I didn't. I got bailed out by my trusty friend, and I really realized at that time, I was like, it was just in Miami, the guy's from Atlanta, but still, I just really needed to kind of reset and realize, what am I doing? What am I doing? Am I escaping? Am I just so frustrated that, I'm not getting the answers that I want? What am I doing? And I sat in a hotel room that, Walter, thank God, helped me book. And I sat there talking to him. I'm like, what's going on with me? And he's like, you're processing this. He's like, stop, trusting other people, though, with this stuff. And I'm like, okay. And I came back. I flew back. It was a real wake-up call for me. And I ended up deciding to just kind of stop calling the detective so much for a while. And sometimes I regret that, sometimes I don't. But when I say a while, it was 2 months. And I ended up going, to work just for a little while for a company. And I created an event program for them, doing the stuff that I do. I think I needed some normalcy back in my life. I really did. And because that was just a crazy ride. Here I was, on this crazy ride. After losing someone, I'm sitting here going, what now? Well, no, then this became this crazy kind of literally a show. I'm on a show being showcased everywhere. So, and that was tough, but so I created a more positive environment for myself, and I was hanging out with the girls from that and my life and friends that would support me, and I created new friendships from this work environment, and I did start dating again, and nothing serious, but, I felt strong enough to start calling the detective again. And he started telling me the same kind of lies again. And so finally what happened was I hired a private investigator. And that took about a year for me to do, give or take, maybe 11 months. And this private investigator was referred to me by one of my friends. She said that she knew him through some work they've done before. She said, she was like, I'm not really sure 100% what, he can do for you, but he's done great work for us. I trust him. He wants to help you. He wants to help you. And so I met with him, and he ends up telling me, he's like, I saw you on the show. He's like, I really want to help you. And probably, hindsight's 2020, that probably should have been a little bit of a red flag for me. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't at all, still to this day. But I was really excited that he wanted to help. That's all I cared about, because I kept telling him, I'm like, look, I'm not getting a response from this detective. His inbox is full. His stories have changed multiple times. It went from in the hospital, these are upstanding men. Now they're not. They're terrible guys. They do these, they've done a couple things here and there. Now they're telling, different lies. Now they're saying they had real weapons and they had fake weapons. And like, literally, guys, these are the crazy stories I was being told. Can you imagine? And maybe you can. Maybe you're going through this right now. And I'm so sorry if you are. This is horrible. But this is the stuff I'm being told. And, my parents didn't want anything to do with this. And I'm like, oh my God, like it was messing me up so much. And I'm like, I can't do this alone. Like I need a private investigator. And so I'm hiring this private investigator. It must have been like early October. So yeah, it was right before the year. And I'm like, okay, so I give him, all the information I have. And he's like, okay, he's like, what can you get for me? I need death certificate, records from the hospital, all these things. And I'm like, I don't have all these things. I'm not his wife, and I'm not his, mother or his, father. And he's like, can you get them? And I'm like, okay. So I go on this like quest to go get these documents. And I start to realize that it's exactly that. Unless I was his wife or his mother or father, I wasn't getting them because his mother and father were both living. And unless they were deceased and I would be the next of kin, then I couldn't get those documents, which was crazy because I was the one in the hospital that was, declared to be the one to do the DNR, what was going to happen to him, all of those things, because I was the person in the hospital. I was a family member in the hospital. I was the kin in the state. Like, yes, he had his girlfriend, but like that was his girlfriend. That was 21 and they weren't married. So I'm allowed to do those things, but I'm not allowed to get his public death record, like a piece of paper. I'm not allowed to get his hospital records, all of these things. So I had to go to an attorney. So this is what I find out. I had to go to an attorney. He's a friend of mine. And I had to get her to write a letter, get a notary, and then get the hospital records, then also take that to go get the death records. I had to get all these different records and basically get her to state that my father lives in a different country, so that's why, and that my mother wants nothing to do with the situation, because that was the absolute truth. And it finally worked, but it was so much work just to get these simple things that like literally your mom or dad or your husband or wife or whoever is your like person could just walk in and do. And I was just fighting so hard to get information. Meanwhile, where's this detective? He won't even answer the phone. And why is his inbox is totally full? Like, what is wrong with our justice system? Like, don't even get me started there, guys. Like, wow. It still gets me fired up today, and I'm still sitting in like 2017 going into 2018 talking about what I was doing. And it was terrible. And one of the reasons I got really fired up, so I'll go back into some family stuff here. In 2017, right after I kind of went through this, wake-up call for myself, like, what am I doing? Why am I, traveling, with someone I'm dating, and, like, nothing happened between me and this person, but, like, and my friend bails me out, but I needed a wake-up call, and kind of got it together, and I go visit my youngest sister, and she was living in Savannah at the time with her husband. And for Halloween, and I saw my big brother Caleb, which is not my biological brother, but I've talked about him in previous episodes. He lost his brother, and I talk about the connection that we all have with that. But he comes to the visit as well, and my youngest sister and I, were sitting outside talking for a while prior to Caleb getting there, and I asked my sister, because my mother and I obviously had no relationship whatsoever at the time. Our last conversation was not just the LA conversation. She ended up like cussing me out a month or so after that because of some like cell phone situation. It was absolutely insane. So that didn't last so long. But sometimes I know that people deal with grief differently, and I think that's how she was dealing with it. So this is why this part came as a shock to me. So here we are, like not even a year anniversary, and my youngest sister is telling me, she goes, well, Mom is really at peace with everything. And I'll never forget just looking over at my sister, because we had like our dogs out, going potty and playing on this play area that she had out there, because she was married, and we were outside and we're waiting for my friend to get there to go out for, it was Halloween 2017, so we're just coming up on the anniversary. November 21st is when he passed. And I remember my stomach, like I'm sick to my stomach talking about this right now, and it's 2022 when I'm recording this, and I was like, she is at peace with the fact that her son was murdered. She's at peace with that. And she was like, well, yeah, like that's just, she said she's at peace with it. And I don't blame my sister at all for that reaction. I was the one reacting a lot at the time. I mean, she was so young. I was 31 at the time. She was 21. I mean, come on. I don't even know what I would have done at that time. I'm like still processing this, and I'm 35. I mean, come on. I wasn't mad at her. I couldn't believe this. Couldn't believe I was sitting here listening to this, that a mother was at peace with the fact that her son had been murdered. And I kept repeating it. It was like such a trauma like reaction. I was like, she's at peace with this. Are you like using choice words? Freaking kidding me. I was saying things much worse than that. And she's like, yeah, like, and then she starts to tell me this story about, my brother and I share a birthday. And she's like, yeah, we were together on Andreas' birthday and my birthday, by the way. And she's like, a light was flickering, and she was like, yeah, that's Andreas. And like, whilst I believe in that too, I'm like, okay. I'm like, and that wasn't emotional to her. That wasn't like a lot for her. She's like, no, like she's good with it. Like she's accepted. She's at peace with it. She said she's okay with what happened. And I'm like, here I am calling this detective, fighting for it, going to attorneys, going to private detective. I'm like, I am like, oh my God. I mean, I lost it. And when Caleb spent the night with us on Halloween night, like we stayed out in the living area, and I just told him, I said, Caleb, I said, how can I care so much and I feel like no one else cares in this family? I said, how is that normal? Why do I feel like everyone else just wants to pretend like this didn't happen? And I am like, am I obsessing about this? Am I like, but I can't just get over this. Like, and that was not the first time I had seen my sister. Like, her husband and her had come up twice for hurricane things, and then also for my 31st birthday party that I had thrown. I had like a whole housewives like theme, and had all the girls from the show over and all my best girlfriends, and like, whole thing. Like, it was a whole, I had seen her. So this wasn't like a thing where I hadn't seen my sister in a long time and like just went off on her. She was the only family member that I was actually like having an active relationship with, because, my youngest sister is someone that we have a 10-year age gap. She's someone that I helped raise. We have a different dynamic, and I didn't want to like ruin that, but like I just was in shock, and I really felt like she was leaning towards that side. And leaving that trip, Caleb looked at me and he was like, yeah, you're probably not going to be the same for a while after this. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, don't worry, she'll understand one day. Like, this is a lot more than I think what she can realize right now. And I do think he was right. I do think so. But I remember leaving her house, and it was so tough because I knew we wouldn't talk for a long time. And it wasn't because I didn't want to, but it was because she just couldn't understand why I was struggling at the level that I was. I really was struggling. No one got it in my family. I think now maybe my dad was, but I didn't know that at the time. And I think that's what's important. I think that's some advice that I would give here, is that I wish I would have known that people do grieve differently. But I do think that, and this might be unpopular in what I say, but I do think it's inappropriate in some ways that people grieve. I don't think what my mother said was appropriate. I just don't. And it might be unpopular opinion time, but I don't know how you can accept the fact that your son was murdered and it was an open case and you had not made any inquiries and you didn't care. I mean, maybe you did, but you weren't showing that you cared, and you were quote unquote at peace with it and telling your very impressionable 21-year-old daughter that. And I'm still, that still affects me to this day. It really does. And I think when you go through something that emotional and that traumatic, hearing something like that even secondhand, I kind of learned to push through and kind of love someone even through that, even if it has to be from afar, because what kind of lack of coping mechanism and what kind of lack of self-awareness and tools have you been given in your life that you can't admit that you're struggling? And so I think that's why it's so important to me that I make this podcast and I'm as raw and open and honest as I possibly can be, because I know that was a bunch of bullshit. There's no peace in that. There's no mother in the world that can say that you're at peace 11 months after your son was shot and his killer walks free, and the detective has not been called by you once, and the detective doesn't respond truthfully or honestly to your daughter who calls incessantly and has now hired a private detective. So yeah, it definitely affected my sister and I's relationship, in my opinion, and that was hard. And I knew that driving away. I mean, what a feeling to drive away. I guess I have a thing with trips, a lot of travel in my life, and driving from Savannah back to Atlanta, and I just knew, I was like, we're not going to talk for a while. Because I'm sure she didn't like the fact that I have a very strong personality, if you can't tell from listening to these episodes, and I was even more reactive with those things at the time, and had a lot to kind of sort through. And so I went back and, I was hell-bound determined to get the hospital records, get his death records, get the PI, private investigator, everything he wanted. And I met him, and it was either early 2018 by the time I got it. I think that's when it was. Yeah, early 2018. So made it through the holidays, spent it with my friends, and then, I think that's when I finally got everything, because it took some time, as it does, My friend's a great attorney. It's not that. It's, walking in there and being like, yep, mom's still alive. Yep, dad's still here. Nope, didn't have a spouse, but here's why. So, but I finally got it. And that's just the kind of person I am. And I think that's the advice I'd give you if you're going through something like that, or if you're really determined on doing something for your sibling that you've lost, or you really want to do something, or if you want to grieve in your way, or whatever it is that you're fighting for, don't give up, because it's important that you do that for you. And so I did, and I got that information, and I handed it over to the PI, and we met again, and he went and did his research, and he was really obsessed about talking about me doing this show. And I look back on that now, and I'm like, okay, but what's going on with the detective? And did you talk to the previous, the detective that I actually liked in the hospital? Did he have anything to say? And it was so disheartening, because months went by and chasing of him happened, and I saw him posting on social media, and like he would like, stuff from my podcast and things like that. And I remember going back to my friend that referred him, he was also an attorney, telling her like, hey, I don't think this was like a genuine thing. Like, I think he's not taking this as serious. And so long and short, like I ended up meeting with him again, and I'm like, he's like, no, I'm taking it serious. And I didn't believe him. So I ended up having to fire him as a private investigator because he never got me enough information. I ended up getting more information than he did because I would ask him questions and he wouldn't know, which was really crazy. So in early 2018, I started to get a few weird messages throughout 2017, but I didn't think much of them. But in early 2018, I got a very cryptic message from a woman about my brother, just saying that she told my brother to stay away from these guys that took his life. And there was one particular guy, obviously, that did it, but she said that. And she had tried to reach out to me before as I saw the messages, but it was very cryptic. Her profile was very odd, and she used the name Nicole. I don't know if that was her real name. I'll say it now because it doesn't really matter. But she was afraid to kind of say anything. Well, time passed, and then in March of 2018, I end up finding this whole blog written about my brother by this gentleman that apparently my brother had produced music videos for and had been friends with, and he was talking about how he found out about it and found out about how my brother died, and he was shocked and brokenhearted. And I just felt like, oh my God, I have a lead. Oh my God, like I've got to find this guy. And so it wasn't like his blog was hidden. It was pretty easy to find. I Googled my brother's name all the time. I was like a dog with a bone, you guys. Like, I wanted to know all the time what was going on. And for those of you who have siblings that have passed and you don't have answers and you don't have closure and you don't have all the things that people talk about, you know what I'm talking about. And so when something like that comes up, you're like, oh my God, this person knows my brother, knows my sister, whatever it is, a brother, sister, and I hate your sibling. And this is it's everything. It's everything. And this person ends up agreeing, and obviously for his privacy, because he did agree to speak with me. I was like, will you meet me in person? I probably freaked him out a little bit. I really did. So I'm so sorry. And I hope you listen to the podcast at some point. But I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for speaking to me. But for your privacy, I will never mention who you are. But he did agree to speak to me. I wanted to meet him, but I'm sure I freaked him out so bad because I just wanted to talk to someone that was around my brother around that time, right, to understand more, anything. And this was really one of the the last, again, nails in the coffin in firing my private investigator detective. He was clearly not getting the job done, because if I can find this stuff, come on, it was out there. Now, the private messages, I had received a few cryptic ones as well before, from just weird different profiles that would pop up. People telling me things, saying, I told your brother not to hang out with those people. I'm so sorry for your loss. Your brother should never hung out with them. And then they would disappear. So it was very cryptic. This went on throughout 2017. So I was able to provide that information to the private investigator, including this elusive Nicole figure. So that was all very weird. But then when this blog popped up and this guy was real and we chatted on social media and then we spoke on the phone, Even though, again, I really wanted to just meet him in person because I think I just needed that connection to my brother again. It felt so long. Even though his girlfriend and I would still text from time to time, but I felt like it was really important that she moved on with her life. You know, she was so young. She is still so young, but like, you know, I am grateful to this day that she did that for me. She's a beautiful person. She really is. I have nothing but wonderful things to say about her. And speaking to this gentleman though, so the blog was very this not about his like death or anything, but about him, and then him finding out about him being shot. And so I'm like, okay, this guy knows something. And so he agreed to speak with me on the phone. I think the meeting in person again freaked him out. And we spoke on the phone for a while. I mean, not hours, but it was a while. Longer than I might speak to some crazed like sister, like, help me, what is going on? And he gave me a lot of information that's, you know what, I did pass this on to the PI. This was like right before I fired the PI because it was like he was sitting on everything. He had to send it all back to me before I moved on to someone else. And he did tell me that, you know, Andreas, this was so eerie, guys. This was so eerie. So he told me that my brother Andreas was shooting, you know, his music videos for him. They had a very close relationship. He was telling me just so many things about my brother that were true, spot on, just simple things. But then I, you know, kind of got into I asked him if I could ask him some like complicated, maybe hard questions. And I asked him, you know, if he knew of him hanging out with, you know, maybe some people that would want to harm him, or, you know, some groups and things like that. And it did come up that there was, you know, a group of people that seemed a little not so great. But this kid was obviously not affiliated with them. If he was, I definitely would be shocked. But, I mean, who would write a blog about that then? I mean, he's not featured in any of the video evidence or anything like that. And yes, it exists, by the way. And so he then proceeds to tell me, like, what was weird to him was that my brother was supposed to shoot him, like, the next day or following day, and he never heard from my brother. And that was unlike my brother, which, for me, that's not unlike my brother. But for my brother, work-wise, I'm sure that wasn't like my brother because he was a hustler. My brother was and is, I'm sure, still up there watching over, is a hustler. And we're very much alike in that way, but we're different types of hustlers. But my brother was a hustler. So if he said he was going to be there to shoot his video, I'm quite sure he was going to be there. And he said that, you know, he was always there. And so he knew something was wrong. And it took him a long time to find out what happened. And then he mentioned, you know, a few names and a few people. And then this particular woman's name came up. And I asked him to connect me, you know, to some people. And he did. And what was interesting was the people that he connected me with to speak with was this woman again. And she disappeared again. And the other individuals that he connected me with, they were scared to talk. And one of the last things that they said to me, including this woman, Nicole, which I know is not her real name. That's why I'm saying it. I know it's not her real name. They all said the same things. They said, we told Andreas not to hang out with this group. We knew they were, you know, not good. We knew they were a scary group. We knew just same things. It was so weird. Same things. This guy said it too. And, you know, they said, you know, we told him to watch his back. This wasn't worth it. It wasn't going to be a good situation. And I asked them, I pleaded with all these different people. I said, you know, and all these eerie messages, I'm like, can you tell me something? Please tell me anything. Like, you know, a name, anything that can lead me there. Even though the detective had all this information and, like, we technically know who it is, like, I wanted information. I wanted just, like, one step away, one person away, so I could just, I don't know what I was even trying to do. I don't know. do the job of my PI. And I remember every time that would happen, they would either disappear or they would say, like, I can't, I'm sorry. Like, I'm scared of these people. Like, these people are not good people. I can't, like, they freak me out. Like, it was similar comments every single time. And that's how I knew that I was getting really, really close. But at the same time, I felt like I was so far away. And that's why I had to let my PI go. How could I have gotten so close? And he sat on all this stuff for months and months and months. And he still sat on the evidence for another, I think, 3-4 months. And then he finally physically sent it back to me. And I still continue to receive some of these messages that I had shared with him during this entire time. And so that was very disheartening and challenging, because I felt like I made this connection. I made like 10 steps forward, only to fall like 20, 30 steps back. And all I wanted to do was just find out what really happened to my brother, even though I think in my heart I knew the whole time what really happened. Thank you so much for listening to the Surviving Siblings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did creating it for you, then share it on your chosen social media platform. And don't forget to tag us at Surviving Siblings Podcast so that more surviving siblings can find us. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Surviving Siblings Podcast. All links can be found in the show notes, so be sure to check those out too. Thank you again for the support. Until the next episode, keep on surviving, my surviving siblings.